During my experience in prison, from inmates and COs, they used to look at me and used to be always like, "Man, why are you in here?" And because I was always quiet, and that what I was actually do, as far as job wise, whatever I did it, and I didn't give the COs no problems or nothing like that. When it was lockup time, whenever I locked up, and they used to be like, "Man, all of them like, why are you in here?" And I tell them, and they be like, "I don't see it. I don't see it. You're a good person. I don't see it." And I started laughing, be like, "Yeah, I know, man, but unfortunately, hey, I mean, I got caught up. You know what I mean?"
There are good people in prison. There are people that want to change in prison, but don't know how to make that transition. There are some good people coming out of prison. We made a mistake. Now we need a chance to show you that we have learned to make better decisions. We have grew.
I'm a leading example. I came out and I grew, and I grew for the better. I mean, with the help of the sing program, Mr. Joiner, I am thankful.
That was the voice of Sam Dent, who faced a mandatory minimum 20 years in prison after conviction in a case I prosecuted around the same time as the case I prosecuted against my co-host, Lynard Joiner. In previous episodes, Mr. Joiner and I discussed his Shifting into New Gear program for helping people successfully re-enter community and family life after release from prison. Mr. Dent was one of Mr. Joiner's early clients, and in this episode he tells us what a difference it made after returning to the community to have the support he received from Mr. Joiner in his SING program, including assistance finding employment. Mr. Dent shares his backstory of how he ended up going to prison and tells us about his experience in prison. Most importantly, and most interestingly, he shares the story of who he is today, of what he's made of himself after prison. You will also learn a lot from the exchange that he, Mr. Joiner, and I had about criminal justice policy issues. As I told them during that discussion, they are subject matter experts, speaking from lived experience, giving them a perspective of great value to those of us who've never seen our justice system from the inside out, rather than the outside in. This is Justice Voices, stories that need to be told, voices that need to be heard. Welcome to Justice Voices. I'm your host, David Risley.
And I'm Lynard Joiner.
And our guest today is Sam Dent.
How y'all doing there? How y'all doing? Good day.
I'm doing well, and we are really happy to have you here with us today.
Yeah, thank you. I'm kind of excited to be here.
Mr. Dent, you and I first met years ago.
Yes, I can somewhat still remember. I was like at this store used to be on like 25th and Cook, something like that, and police came and snatched me up, and I'm looking like I done bonded out. What are y'all picking me up for? They was like, well, they want to see you down at the Justice Department. I'm like, huh? Okay, so they took me down to this building over right off Monroe by Springfield High School and brought me into the office where you was at. So you sat me down, you know what I mean? You was kind of laying back, smooth, spun your chair around. And you like, you might want to listen to what I got to say. And I was like, I admit I was giving you a hard time. Because I was like, no, I need my lawyer here. And so finally, he's like, well, I'm going to give you the ins and out, you know what I mean, on what's going on. And you pretty much explained to me and talked to me how y'all do things around here. And it's like, how you think you got here? I said, y'all came and picked me up. He was like, no, someone told on you. For you to be here, someone told on you. So I'm looking in the back of my head like, yeah, that's true. And, you talked to me, you gave me a good speech on how things go about for us. I can stay out and do my time, but you gonna have to do what the other guy did. He did it on you. You got to do it on someone else. And I didn't too much feel that because you know what they say. They say snitches get stitches. So I was kind of like had that in the back of my head. And uh oh man, it was just y'all tag team me up in there that to where I'm like, man, I just like all I wanted was my lawyer. You know what I mean? Finally, my lawyer, came in and I don't know. I think he was just as messed up in here as I was. So he just, I mean, it just was it wasn't no good having no lawyer. Cause when y'all got through picking him apart, he was like, man, I think you ought to go on and do what they ask. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh man, I don't know. And far as things like that is, it wasn't just for me to go and snitch on somebody. You know what I mean? The thing was that it was the stuff was mine. You know what I mean? And for me to do something like that, and then I would have been falsely telling on someone else. You know what I'm saying? So that was something I couldn't do. You know what I mean? So at the time, I had to say, yeah, I do that just so y'all can let me go. And y'all, when that's what y'all did, y'all let me go, and I just went on about my business. I wasn't even studying that other guy that was infiltrated or whatever. You know what I mean? Because I mean, like I said, it was mine, and it would have been wrong for me to just tell on somebody that I have no idea about. How he conduct his business or something like that. So I would have just been making up something.
And we weren't interested in hearing anything you'd make up.
Right.
I know what you're talking about is the old DEA office.
Yes.
So you were brought in, and I would have been there and as the prosecutor in a case and presented you with the opportunity to cooperate in a covert, undercover capacity,
Right.
secret capacity in our investigation of other people. And as a result of that, you could receive a reward when you were prosecuted in a case that I had would be prosecuting you for.
Right.
And when you asked to speak to a lawyer, of course, any questions of you would have stopped until your lawyer got there. But we probably still presented you with, here's your situation, and this is what you need to talk to your lawyer about.
Yes.
So I gather you agreed to cooperate and were turned loose that day.
Yes. And as soon as I was turned to loose, that's just my head just went blank. I just forgot what all y'all was talking about. It just all I know I was back out on the street. So I was, as I was out, even I think it was like in March I got picked up, and it had quite a few months even that I still didn't have no desire to even though y'all gave me a nice amount of time to give y'all somebody, but still, like I said, I mean, it was my stuff, you know what I mean? So I I just didn't see it like that, I just whoever like said the guy was or the guys was, I just let them went on about their business. I'm minding my own business.
So what happened in your case? Tell us about that.
Well, I got picked up in October of '97 on a manufactured to deliver a controlled substance. And when I asked, even though when like you talking, you was like, well, Mr. Dent, you're looking at 20 years. But if somehow, but like I didn't see it like that. But that's what I ended up with, 20 years. So, going through, the process of, being sentenced, you are if you in the courtroom, you happen to look back over your shoulder, something you pretty much trying to look back to see what's family there, and you probably look back, it's probably like a handful of your family there, or something like that. Like a lot of your family don't like stuff like that, you know what I mean? Even so I wasn't, even though I wasn't out there just sell drugs because I could sell drugs or nothing like that, you know what I mean? Just it was pretty much me being a bad kid as I, grow up. It's not like, my parents did what they did everything right. It was just me. And, you get older, you get a family or something like that, and you trying to get a job, but somehow, I don't know, the job, trying to get a job and stuff like that, you can't do that and you don't want to stay in the streets and drink and all that, you know what I mean? So that won't work. So you go in to try to do an interview or something like that, and the guest that's interviewing you or something like that, they'll see it in you, you know what I mean? And you be back where you started from trying to get a job and then somehow you end up in the drug game, In my case, that what happened. I wasn't in the drug game, like I said, just because I could sell drugs and nothing like that. I was in the drug game because I had a family.
How
I
old
was
were you?
I was like I was in my no lady. I started off, I think about around 19, around right 19 years old.
And how old were you when you got arrested and convicted?
About 29. I think about 29 years old.
What kind of drugs were you selling?
Crack cocaine. That was pretty much I was out there selling crack cocaine. Back, well, yeah, say in the late 80s. I mean, they done went through it to where they had to, whoever how you get it, they'll do it themselves, but cook it up themselves or something like that. But they was buying powder and converting it over to crack. But like I think in the late 80s up here, I guess the crack cocaine was introduced to the game, and when you can buy it now, you didn't have to buy it in powder. You could buy it in powder already get it in crack cocaine. So that's how when I did it, I get it already in crack cocaine.
Well, Mr. Dent, with me being a drug dealer myself during the same time you was out there selling drugs, I mean, we grew up together. We grew up together, and while we was in the drug gang, there's time that me and you came together. As a matter of fact, we went with two sisters. We dated two sisters at
Right.
the same time that all this was taking place.
As the conversation continued, Mr. Dent told the story of a police search of his house and the discovery and seizure of a substantial amount of crack cocaine. The part that was especially interesting to me as the prosecutor in his case was when he said the police missed a full kilogram, which was 2.2 pounds, that was hidden well enough it wasn't found even though the police drug dog was barking at it. He said he told the police the drugs they did find were his, hoping that would head off any questioning of his girlfriend, who he was afraid under pressure might tell the police more than they already knew. So you took the weight.
Yes.
And you went to prison.
Yes.
For 20 years.
Yes.
Which would have been a mandatory minimum penalty with your history and with that weight.
Right. Actually, because for on that, however it was and whatever, actually, I was looking at 10 years, actually, but I got enhanced 10 years. So that's how I ended up with the 20.
Because of a prior felony drug conviction of some kind.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to fast forward in time. I want to come back to where we're at right here. But let's fast forward in time, and let's talk about you today.
Yes, sir.
You and I met because you know Lynard Joiner.
Yes.
And in episodes 1 and 2 of this podcast, Mr. Joiner and I shared our story of how we reconnected after he served 17 years in prison. And he had reached out to the governor's office to talk to him about a program that he had here in Springfield that he had created to help people successfully reenter the community after they're released from prison. And he was surprised when the person who called him back was David Risley.
Right.
And at that time, I was the director of public safety policy. And he and I reconnected. and I was impressed with what he was doing. He, in turn, introduced me to you, and you and I reconnected.
Right.
And at that time, you were a manager at Pizza Ranch.
Yes. I was when I had got out of prison, we being getting out of prison like that, I was in the halfway house and they let us go certain hours to go look for jobs. I was walking and looking for jobs, and not far from the Triangle Center where I was stationed at, Mr. Joiner stayed over, and I just happened to see him standing out over there. And he seen me, Sam, man, that's you, and he called me on over there. And we got to talking, and I was talking about how I was, out looking for a job, and he got to telling me about the SEAM program, shipping in the new gear. He got to telling me about his program and how he trying to help, inmates that getting out and that to reconnect with their family, to get jobs and everything. And I'm like, well, I'm trying, He said, I tell you what, he said, give me a couple of days, Let me see what I can come up with. Matter of fact, the next day he called me like, I had went over there. He said, I've been over to Charlie Parker. The guy that owned the place name is Mike Murphy.
This is a restaurant, Charlie Parker's restaurant.
Restaurant, Charlie Parker, yes. And guy that owned the name Mike Murphy. He said, I had a talk with him. He said, you need to go over there and he gonna give you an interview. I was like, all right. So I went over there, and Mike, he was talking to me. Mike Murphy, the owner at Charlie Parker, he was talking to me, and he was telling me, I heard good things about you. You willing to work, And he said, well, Mr. Joiner, he said you'll work now. He said, I won't have no doubts about you or nothing, which he said. I'm like, no, man, I just need a job. I just need a chance. You know what I'm saying? He said, well, Mr. Joiner assured me that how you did in the joint. You're a good cook and things like that. So he said, I tell you what, all right, Mr. Dent, Mr. Joiner now, we're gonna hire you. We're gonna give you a chance. He said, all right. I worked it. So I worked it at Charlie Parker's clear until Mike sold it. That one of the other managers that worked there, buy him out, and he ran for state representative. Even now, today, me and Mike, Mr. Murphy, we stay in, contact, texting each other, and, he see how I'm doing. And he always tell me, if you need me for a reference, use me for a reference and all that. He was like, man, it just, he still, even in it didn't stop there. Probably 6 months or something, Internet had built this place called a Pizza Ranch. And I guess Mr. Joiner was on top of that as well. He called me and he's like, how would you like to go for a second interview to, try to get another job? I said, what you talking about? And he told me, he was like, they're having at the unemployment off the Ninth Street, they're having open unemployment. So I went up in there and, I was talking to the lady that owned the place and a few of her managers, and she welcomed me to welcome y'all to come on in and do an application. So I need for you to get up in the morning, go on up there and do your application, you know what I mean? So I went up there and, I did the application, and ended up getting hired. So during the midst of, all that, like I said, I worked, it just, a fresh place like that, man, it just needed reliable workers. And
they were just getting started in Springfield.
Yes. And it was like my hours, and they had me doing over hours because I couldn't even walk in the door good because they was like, such and such called off. So we might need you to stay for their shift too. So pretty much I worked at Pizza Ranch 6-7 days a week. And like I said, I worked my way up to the manager every month, they was just, well, we're gonna promote you to do this. We're gonna promote you to that. We need you to do that. I said, even I worked at them and I worked at Charlie Parker's till Mike sold it, and the new manager got to switching everything around. I said, well, I can't do it because I worked at Pizza Ranch too. And on my off days at Mike Murphy, I worked at the Pizza Ranch all day. So I said, well, no, I'm just gonna go on and go with the Pizza Ranch. So when I did that, the lady went on, she made me a full-time manager at the Pizza Ranch. So in the process, Mr. Joiner, and he was at the Boys and Girls Club. So he came up there with the Boys and Girls Club, to bring the kids up there to eat. And I got to thinking, I said, oh man, we be having these programs up there that where the kids or groups can come in and they can do, money for tips. What would they?
Fundraiser.
The fundraiser.
Mm-hmm.
And I went out there and I took the boss lady out there and introduced her to Mr. Joiner. I said, I know you know Mr. Joiner from when he talked to you about us getting hired, up in here for, us felons. She's like, yeah, I remember Mr. Joiner. I said, well, just so have Mr. Joiner work at Boys and Girl Club around the kids. I said, groups like that, I said, can't they do fundraisers here too? She's like, yeah. Yeah. She said, that's perfect. So, her and Mr. Joiner, got together and, they talked, and I guess they had a lot more common than what they both expected, because Mr. Joiner gave her some good pointers on a lot of things, as far as her fundraisers and stuff like that. So, and when he did, what was it, Christmas?
Yeah.
Did he come up there where he do his Christmas gift giveaway and all that up in there? And
you're talking about a sing activity that was an annual activity.
Yes.
Where Mr. Joiner organizes having people who are sing clients bring their kids into Pizza Ranch and they have a meal.
Yes.
And they have gifts and things of that sort, and just have a nice activity together.
Yes.
And I had the opportunity, you were there on one of those occasions as the manager, but the owner was there, the lady you're talking about. And I talked to her about you behind your back. And I'll tell you, she said to me that you were just a wonderful employee.
Yes.
And she said, I don't know what we would do without him. Now, that tells me that the Sam Dent of today is doing something very different. And you've proven yourself to be a reliable and valuable employee to Pizza Ranch. Now, then Pizza Ranch went into the pandemic, closed down.
Yes.
What's happened since?
It was over with after that.
So now that you have left, now that the pandemic caused y'all to be laid off or whatever case was, so where you went from there? Where you went to work from there?
Well, during the pandemic, it wasn't much we can do because of the pandemic. But sitting around enjoying that unemployment, it was just, I'm looking like, well, I know that's gonna have to come to an end soon. So I was trying to figure something out, So it was kind of frustrating till once again. Mr. Joiner, I got something for you. I'm like, huh? He said, I got something for you. I'm like, well, Mr. Joiner, I don't want no fast food restaurant. If that's what you're talking about. He was like, no, Mr. Dent, I think you're going to like this. And I said, all right, what you got for me? He said, well, trying to get in good contact with the SMTD, Springfield Mass Transit Department, and talk with them about, he said he talked with them about felonies coming out. How do they feel about that? And like you said, they pretty much, I mean, if they willing to work, something like that, we don't discriminate or nothing like that. We just need good workers, you know what I mean? And if they do us right, we do them right. You know what I mean? Like I said, if they gonna work, we can get in there. So, Mr. Joiner had me to go online to do an application. And so sure enough, I was called in. I was surprised. I was like, I'm thinking, man, Springfield Mass Transit, they'll never hire a guy like me. I didn't think that. So enough, went in, and the lady that interviewed me, she was like, yeah, I heard, man, you're a reliable guy, you work. And, Mr. Joiner assured me, the shifting in the new gear, guy, he assured me that you're a good worker. She said, I end up getting hired. The lady liked how I talk, and we talked about my past jobs, and I told her how Mr. Joiner got me on there. We talked about my past jobs, so she like we believe in giving guys that want to work. We believe in giving them a chance, so we're gonna give you a chance. And I must say once again, I'm kind of like the talk of the place, because if they need me, they know I'm there. So I don't have no problem with working, anything like that. They call me, man. They call me sometime first thing in the morning. Sleep still in my eyes. Mr. Dent, what you doing? We need you. You're ready to work. Say less. I'm on my way. So
let's back up for a minute. I hate to cut y'all, but let's back up for a minute. I think people really need to know this right here. Now, doing all the time, you're getting all these jobs and stuff, the same program helping you with the jobs and stuff, but you had what we call supervised release. Where were you in the probation office dealing with all these transition and stuff? How was that dealing with being on supervised release? What stress did that give you, if it gave you any like it gave me? I had a lot of stress. I felt like going back to prison at one time.
Actually, probably when I first got out, and getting jobs like that, actually they worked with me. They worked with me on my jobs, and that where I had to be frustrated and nothing like that. If I look at my phone and see a message, I call them back, and they'll give me instruction to do this and do that. You know what I'm saying? And I had submitted an affidavit to get released from my supervised release. And first they denied me, and for whatever reason, I don't know, I guess it felt that I ain't do enough time on supervised release or nothing like that. But then about 2 months later, I got another court paper, from a lawyer up there in Peoria, saying he submitted another affidavit, a motion for me to get off supervised release. So I think I ended up doing about 3 years, out of 10 on supervised release. So last year I got a thing in the mail in August saying the beginning of September of 2020, I would no longer be on supervised release. I would be off.
Well, that's good for you, because I had 5 years. I did all 5 of mine. Most of all my other co-defendants got cut. Mine did not get cut. They made me do all 5 of them. But one of the things that I struggle with, just for the listen to hear this, when you're on supervised release, you are still incarcerated.
Right.
You're out, but you still are in the system. They're part of your sentence. And that's one thing that my PO was constantly telling me, just still a part of your sentence.
Right.
So I was like, part of my sentence?
Yes.
I done did my time. Why y'all still keeping me? And one of the good things that I see you didn't have to deal with was they wasn't coming to your job like they coming to my job.
No.
That frustrates you more than anything. Now people that didn't know you was what word I want to use, have been to prison. Now they know. Everybody know your business.
All right, okay.
Yeah, everybody know your business. Because, you sitting out there talking with the PO, everybody, all the rest of your coworkers looking at you like, oh, he's a criminal. So it's a lot you have to deal with when you're on supervised release. So you want to try to develop that good relationship like what you had with your PO. And I admire you for that, man, for staying with it.
I even invited mine to come up to my job. I mean, I'm like, like I told my PO, if you feel, you want to just stop in any day, you call me and I'm at work, you want to stop in, come up there, have lunch, on me, you know what I mean? If it ain't on me, it'd be on the boss lady. She would love to talk to you too, So
wow.
Unfortunately, right, they like I said, they had the open invitation, but yeah, like I said, they never showed up to my job.
Well, they probably didn't feel that they needed to.
They did.
That means that you were somebody that they had confidence enough in, I know Mr. Joiner's over here looking, well, what about me?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, in any event, you had a good job, and SMTD, the Mass Transit District, seems to have, they're treating you well.
Yes.
What do you do there? And how much time do you, what are your hours? What do you work?
I drive the access bus. My hours, I think I'm supposed to have like 6.5 hours a day or something like that. But I think they still like kind of short of staff, or the business is way more than they can handle. So sometime they just call me and ask me could I work, or that before I go in ask me could I work extra hours or something like that. And my answer sure would be yes, because I said take money to pay bills, and then I look at it like this: if some family happened family wide or some emergency, you know, you need money to travel with or something like that. So I don't mind by taking no extra hours or nothing like that. So if I like I said, if there be an emergency or something like that, I've been and have money. I've been saved up for my paycheck where I can make it to that emergency.
Without telling us the amount, they pay pretty good. Without telling us the amount that you make, they pay pretty good, and they have nice benefit because lots of my family members are employed by them as
Yes.
well.
I looked at it like this too. By me being incarcerated, you being incarcerated and you working for peanuts and pecans, get out. Hey, minimum wage, which was when I first started, when I start off at like $8.25 an hour, that was fine with me, and so now you work up from they didn't bump the minimum wage up, so pretty much average job now probably start you off at 10 an hour or something like that. Hey, I look at it as a blessing.
About that 12 or 21 cent we were making in prison.
Yes.
Wow.
And you're making more than that now.
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah. Now, as you look back at this after you got out of prison, you had several times that you've mentioned that Mr. Joiner was helping you out with finding places to work.
Yeah.
At least 3 jobs, different jobs.
Yes, he did.
What would have been your situation if you didn't have somebody, Mr. Joiner or somebody like him? How would that have affected the outcome? If you're just on your own.
I probably wouldn't be in a better job position as this, by Mr. Joiner being, shipping in the new gear program allows him, to meet with companies and see if he can get touched down with getting offenders like us a chance, something like that. I don't know if I probably been at a fast food restaurant or back out there on the street, but I'm thankful for the shifting in the new gear program. That that got me a long way. And
if there hadn't been that support, that assistance in getting decent jobs, you faced probably a lot of temptation to go back to the old ways so that you could pay the bills and make ends meet.
Oh my God, yes. And it's just the thought of me drinking water from that place, was I was like, oh no. A lot of them don't understand. Enough is enough.
Well, now let's talk about your prison experience. Let's move backwards here to when you went to prison.
Yes.
Tell us about your prison experience.
Well, when I first went into prison, for some reason you got to have that tough man mentality thing, and when you first go in, you're gonna have a lot of inmates want to know who you is, what you do, what you're about, all type of things like that. But for me, on my behalf, all I knew is I had time to do. So I went in, few guys from the street and stuff like that wanted to talk things like that, and being me, I'm like, no, I don't want to talk about that. Just man, just you gotta, you guys just try to get a hold of yourself, settle in, know where you at, and some kind of disbelief, and it takes a minute for that, it just sometime or another, then you'll come around, you get tired of being, cooped up in your cell or your room, something like that, and you try to get out, then try to socialize a little bit to, like I said, to get some sense of to what happened, what went wrong, why you're here, and stuff like that, and just
Well, let me ask this. How much time did you spend in prison?
if I'm not mistaken, I did like 17 years and I think 8 months straight.
About the same amount of time that Mr. Joyner spent in prison then.
Yes.
And during that time, you probably had a lot of opportunity to think about what's the point of all this?
Yes. I had more than a lot of opportunities to think about it. Yes, that's what thought. And being, in federal institution, they got job programs set up there. So it's not like you have to sit around or whatever. So you have to work. And I mean, they start y'all work as soon as you hit the door. So you as soon as you hit the door, you either find your one of their working jobs in there, or they gonna give you one. The one they give you might not like, or something like that. So I ended up with quite a few types of jobs in there, just but the like far as landscaping, maintenance and all that, I ended up with a whole different lot of jobs, but the most jobs I ended up with that I held long was like in the kitchen, food service, and laundry. So those, and not only that, I didn't have a GED. And one of the COs instructs over a job that told me, man, you're a good worker. And if you want to get paid more, because getting 10 to $25 a month, that wasn't gonna cut nothing. And not having a GED or high school diploma, you in prison, that's all you're gonna get. So I even ended up getting my GED in prison. And like I said, that moved me up because, like I said, I was a good worker, and I ended up somehow being grade ones, and that, I mean, it wasn't much out here, but to us in there, that grade one carried a lot of weight. It just you could better your commissary selection. Better your survivor in there where you won't have to, depend on your hometown inmates or something like that to give you what you need, or sturdy word your family out on the street for things like that. You know what I mean? Because like everybody know, even though your family on the street, they got a lot of responsibilities out here as well that they have to take care of. If you in there pressing your family to do this and do that, and y'all don't do this, y'all don't love me type stuff, you'd be dead wrong. You know what I mean? Because they have things they going through out on the street, and by you being in there, you're not seeing that. All you seeing is
Just you.
yes, and what you should have, stuff like that.
So just for the listen, I want to explain something to them. What Sam mean when he talk about a grade one, it's more like a supervisor out here, like your manager, supervisor. There are other individual, other inmate that work under you, which is a
Right.
grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, and a grade 5. These individuals work under you, so it's like you the supervisor as a grade 1 would make you to make a higher pay. But my question to you, Sam, why didn't you work in Unicor? Let me explain to them what Unicor is. Unicor is a factory in the prison, in the federal prison system, where they make different type of stuff like army gear, blanket, bed, different stuff like that.
Right.
Why didn't you work in Unicor? You make more money, especially with you being a grade 1.
Well, they give you an option, when you come in, to to get on the list for Unicor, but sometimes you that Unicor list could be long,
Okay.
So I didn't even think about no Unicor, even though it was suggested. I I wasn't nothing crazy. Like I said, once I started a job in there, and it's actually the 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 CO of that job is accustomed to you doing great work, that they try to make sure they try to give you the highest pay that they can to keep you there.
Yeah.
Because you're doing great work, and even if you, like you said, you got grade 2, 3, whatever, don't do whatever to make the cut. That grade 1 to do will go behind him and do what he need to do to make the cut. I mean, so I didn't the fine I was given when I first got locked up, it wasn't nothing crazy. So that got paid on off. So I didn't owe no fine or nothing like that. So actually the guys that go into Unicor, I mean, some do it for, the money, but most of them go in because they probably have a big fine or something like that, and they go in to try to, get their fine kicked out the way or something like that.
So what you're talking about here is in the prison, they essentially had jobs for people and different levels of jobs, and Unicor is like a manufacturing business that they're running. In the U.S. Attorney's Office, where I worked, most of our furniture was made by Unicor.
Yes, yes.
And so I know they make a lot of things, so they put you to work. Now, along the process and this prison experience that you have, I've heard prison described as crime college. It was one of my former defendants said to me, "Dave, what do you think a bunch of criminals all crammed together all day long talk about? Crime.
Yes.
How to commit it and how to get away with it.
Yes.
Prison is crime college." That's what he said. What's your thoughts about that?
It do exist. You mean, like me being incarcerated, I, walk around and move, and yes, I walks up on, you got groups here, groups there, and yes, and that's what they do. They talk about how they done did this, and what they should have did, and maybe, how things would have been different, all that. So they go in, and then, yes, they have time to think. They have time to reutilize their brain. And so when individuals out on the street and they see this, well, where this come from and that come from, that's because they didn't went in and they didn't use that brain to utilize this in their head. And I can make this. I can make, oh man, I can make plenty off that, and somehow it comes out and it works. From drugs to food, you know what I mean? To come in and they learn a new dish, in the joint of how to do a way of a new dish, all that. It just from criminal minded to using their mind, like I said, for business or food business or, great business, something like that. So
So it sounds to me like what you're describing is two tracks of education going on in parallel.
Yes.
One of them, the prison system, the federal prison system at least, is trying to give you job skills and job habits to become a good, reliable employee on a law-abiding track. And on the other track, you've got the inmates putting their heads together and trying to educate each other and brainstorming about how to commit crime, how to avoid being caught, and how to be a better criminal.
Yes.
Now, you got two tracks. What makes the difference between which track people choose? What made the difference in your life? Which of those two tracks you choose?
What made the difference in my life and what I choose? I got good people behind me. I got like Mr. Joiner here. He instantly, once he, seen and noticed me was out, he instantly stood on top of me, just about, I know you can do better. Not only just Mr. Joiner, the halfway house I was at, the Miss Crawford, she like, man, I know you. I know you're a good person.
Maria Crawford.
Yes.
She's the president of Sing. Did you know that?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, but But when I first met Sam, she was not a board member for us at all. One of the things, staying with what you asked Sam, one of the bigger things for me that made the choice that I was like, I can't put my family through this no more. I don't want to go through this no more. Being in prison to me was like being in another world. You around people that got so much talent. Why this person in prison? You in prison with the person, but you still saying, why you in prison,
Yes.
man? This person is so smart. Why you here in prison? But what we fail to realize is they committed a crime, though.
Right.
See, they knew the right thing. They just tried to do a little bit too much, as we say, and they got caught with it. Now they in here teaching, because you got these same business people teaching these classes in prison. They
Right.
teaching you class. The system allowed them to teach classes. Well, they teaching you every shortcut, how to get around this and that. Hey, man, if you get a kilo, how to convert this and make it into 3. Hey,
Yeah.
I buy 1, I can make it into 3. Now you got the Hispanic guys in there teaching you how to connect, how they can get it to you. Oh, man, so much
So
schooling
much.
in there, you wouldn't believe it.
About crime.
Yeah.
Now this is just really interesting to me, because this is really true out on the street too, because you got 2 tracks out on the street. You got employment that you could get with
Yeah.
law-abiding, legit jobs, and then you've got the criminal path where you can make money selling drugs or doing other sorts of things, stealing stuff, various forms of crime. So it's kind of that's life out of prison, but it's apparently life in prison too, that there's these 2 tracks. Now, the whole point of sending people to prison is the idea that they're going to be punished, or somehow they're going to come out less likely to continue on the criminal track that caused them to go there in the first place. What are your thoughts about that? Does prison move people off the criminal track onto the law-abiding track, or does it make them better criminals, or some of both, depending on the person? And what makes the difference?
Yeah, like I said, it do depend on the person, and it's probably pretty much how they mindset. For instance, me, when I went in, when I didn't have to work or was out doing rec activities and nothing like that, my mind wandered. My mind wandered on what I was gonna do, how if I was gonna come out and be a better drug dealer, or could I come out and work, and I mean it's pretty much all on you. So I just, like I said, I laid there and I brainstormed, and I thought about my family. I thought about the things my family went through. Your friends and family. Just that's just how you think, and I think, like you said, if you put your mind to it, well, I don't want my family and friends to go through that no more. Man, I gotta get out and I gotta do better. I gotta do right, and even with a little help, you can accomplish to do right. I guess I'm a witness to that myself, because like I said, my friends and family stay on top of me, and man, I just
How long did that take? I mean, let's suppose you'd been sentenced to 3 years or 5 years in prison instead of 17. Would you have come out with the same mindset?
no, I mean, I don't think it's not how long you sentence, it just, like I said, if your mindset, and you got your family gonna get on top of you instantly. How about, man, you've been to prison, so that stuff there you don't need in your life, nothing like that, man. I know you can do better, and to someone even help. Like Mr. Johnny even help me if you don't have a ride, Mr. Then I can get you a ride, I'll get you to where you need to go or something like that. Which, I'm like, Mr. John, I'm all right. I got a ride, he'll go over, out, and beyond to help, an individual, if they willing to, if they want to help and they trying to better themselves. He go out the way and he help, and he need to make sure. So like I said, I'm thankful for the shipping and the new gear program because, like I said, they do a lot. Not just for the inmate getting out, ex felony perspective, but for their family as well. He just
So if I'm hearing you right, what you're saying is that it's not how much time you serve in prison, it's what happens when you get out of prison,
yes,
whether there's a viable, realistic alternative to crime,
yes,
or whether your inability to get a decent, good paying job on the law-abiding side on that
Yes.
track causes you to go back to what you used to know and to go back to what you were talking about, people were talking about in crime college back in prison.
yes.
So people like Mr. Joiner and the Sing program make all the difference because there's somebody there to support you on doing, I'm going to
Right.
just say, doing what's right instead of going what's wrong. What do you think, Mr. Joiner?
Well, I think Mr. Joiner might be a little confrontation with this. My thing was this right here. If I had, you pose that same question to me, if I had did 3 or 5 years, guess what? I wouldn't change. I would still been a drug dealer when I got out. Because understanding it took me 4 years to even begin to come to in sync with myself. What I mean by that is, because I'm mad, I'm angry with everybody. I'm blaming everybody except myself. This is how I was. So if I had did 3 or 5 years, that short a time, I've been okay. When I got out, I went right back into being a drug dealer. But I've been a little more smarter because in there, a lot of people had taught me different things and different ways to approach it. Now, also, the reason I will say this for Sam, I didn't have what Sam have. I didn't have a Lynard Joiner when I got out. I
Right.
didn't have that person. This is the difference. I didn't have that Lynard Joiner. I had nobody
Right.
other than my family. But because of my pride in me, I wouldn't allow my family to help me. I began to go do other things. Okay, I got this book. People told me how to make this book work for me when I first got out.
The
see?
book that you wrote.
Yes, they told me how to do this, L.J. Cocoon. People told me, hey, you ain't got no money, this is what you do. This is what you do since you ain't got no money. While you're writing the book, even though you want to self-publish it, people will help you with that. Now, for the reentering program go, I didn't get no help from no reentering program. There was no singing program when I came out here. They had a few programs out here, but they wasn't really doing what they should have been doing. Not to say nothing bad about them, but they didn't have that for me. So mine was a little different from Sam. So now when Sam get out, I have now came up with the same program because I didn't want people to be like I was, wondering. With all that wondering, guess what came through my head? Maybe turn back to my old ways. So see, until you find that balance in your life, it's always up and down, up and down. You think about going back. Then there are guys started coming to me now. I'm out here. There are guys started coming to me. Hey, man, you joined it always with nice, man. Y'all own the joint. Hey, home, man. We all owe y'all. Y'all the real OGs, man. Hey, man, take this key, man. Just give me what I paid for, man. Rest of it, you can have it, man. This and that. So all these things coming at me.
Temptations.
Yes, it's coming at me. But because I got out of prison before I released from prison, I was able to stay strong and stay focused because I had made myself a promise. See, when you promise self something, you stand firm. Yes, promise I made to be broken, but I was determined not to go back. I'm determined not to go back. So that's what kept me focused.
Okay, so here's the question then. That's what changed you, but now why did you then turn around and help other people when they got out? What was it that made you do that? Because you're not getting paid to do it.
Okay. What made me do it is my family in prison. See, you grow and learn. Those individuals in prison with you become your family. Not everybody, but just you being in prison, you bond with individuals. You make bonds and promise with one another. See, there are good people in prison. There are people that want to change in prison, but don't know how to make that transition. So somebody have to be willing to take that step and say, hey, God, I'm going out here. We talking about all the good things we want to do. I'm going to go out here and be a lead person for us. I'm going to pay forward for us. So as I got ready to leave prison, all the good things I was doing in prison you go to church, you put on plays and stuff, because nobody else doing this stuff for you. So I made that promise to them that I was going to go out here and make a way and let the world know there are some good people coming out of prison. We made a mistake. Now we need a chance to show you that we have learned to make better decisions. We have grew.
So what do you think about that, Mr. Dent?
I'm a leading example.
Well, you are.
I came out and I grew, and I grew for the better. You know, I mean, with the help of the sing program, Mr. Joiner, I am thankful. And he still, even, you know, now he reached out to me, even though, like I said, how my work schedule is, he reached out to me, you know, Mr. Dent, I need to interview you. You know, me and Mr. Risley, we got this pod thing going. We want to interview you. We trying to interview how many individuals we can that's, you know, fresh out of prison, been out of prison, you know. And I was like, oh, Mr. Jordan, I don't know, because my schedule, oh, man, if I just so happened today, you know, I said, well, Mr. Jordan, I don't know. I don't think they'll get me in too early. He said, well, we're going to try it anyway. I said, all right, that'll work. So
here you are.
Here I am.
You've probably had a lot of time to think about how, okay, this system could be better than it is. How would you improve it?
Well, you got a lot of young individuals that don't know nothing about work. So I say pretty much it's a lot of work need to be done. And I don't know if how they do like this the boot camp or community service thing like that. A good work camp, man, like from road cleanup to road preparing or something like that. Like you say you give them a big fine. All right, and we're gonna need y'all to take care of this big fine and to get y'all off the street. I think a good community service, like I said, road clean, for anywhere from road clean up to preparing anything that need to be done. How long it take.
So you can work off your fine, not necessarily with money, but by putting in hours of service, like working on a road crew.
Yes.
Or
say if, well, Mr. Dent, your time you was looking at, say we was gonna give you 10 years. We was gonna give you 10 years for this here, but I tell you what if we give you boot camp to do this work for 3 or 5 years boot camp? Now we'll take your choice. Which would you like?
So in other words, you're talking about incentives.
Yes.
Now, this is one of the things that's a policy issue with the criminal justice system. One is there are two different systems for sentencing. One is a determinate sentencing. They sometimes call it truth in sentencing, which is at the time you're sentenced, the judge sentences you to a specific number of years. And you're going to serve that amount of time, minus some minimal amount that you might get for some good time or something like that. But basically, you're going to serve that amount of time. If you got sentenced to 7 years, you're going to serve 7 years.
Right.
Maybe 6.5 with a certain amount of incentives. Right. The other system is an indeterminate system where there's a maximum amount of time that's set, let's say 15, 20 years, but when you get out is up to you. And what you do while you're in the prison system, and there's ways that they evaluate you, your performance, your attitude, the classes you take, things of that sort, your behavior. And then they make an assessment of whether you'd be a threat assessment as to whether you'd be a safe bet for release.
Right.
At that point, you hold the key to your release. The other one, no matter what you do, you're still going to serve that same amount of time unless the law changes, which is how Mr. Joiner and you both got out a little bit earlier than you would have otherwise. Which system makes more sense to you? One where the sentence is fixed and the judge at the time of sentencing has no idea which path you're going to take, what experience you're going to have, what's going on in your head while you're in prison, and it doesn't matter. You're going to serve a certain amount of time, period. Or a sentencing system in which the judge may set the maximum, but you hold the key to the prison door. What you do and the choices you make while in prison make the difference of when you get out.
Right.
Which system makes more sense to you?
I will say the second one do make the difference. I mean, if you hold the key on to get out, you just, in other words, it giving you a chance to change your life, to do, change your life and do better and learn that the streets ain't always it.
Well, with that same question being posed to me that you asked Mr. Dent, first thing I would not have applied the mandatory minimum. In my case, the mandatory minimum, I think, was like 20 years. If I recall correct, I think the judge told me something like, hey, man, my hand tied, just the mandatory minimum, this is what it is. And I would have something more in place, like Sam said, something similar to a boot camp. Like, okay, I don't want you to just go to prison. I want you to go somewhere where you can learn something, like have some type of incentive for being a good worker, taking classes that you need that will help you on your release. For is stuff like, they had a good class where I was called PMA, Positive Mental Attitude. That class worked you mentally. It tested you to see where you was mentally by a guy named Napoleon Hill. That would help me. That class helped me more than anything in prison. Because that class told me, so as a man thinks, so is he. That never left me. If I think I'm a criminal, I'm a criminal. But if I think positive, I can do whatever I believe I can do.
You know what you're talking about is
I can be positive.
one of the things that, as they've studied the Illinois prison system, in terms of what works and what doesn't, in terms of changing outcomes, whether people get out and they come back in a few years or even a year, and those who don't, those who make a success of it, a successful transition into law-abiding life and community life. What makes the difference? What works and what doesn't? One of the things, the thing that is most cost-effective is what's called cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yes.
And what you're describing there sounds a lot like, they call it PMA, positive mental attitude, but it's the same sort of thing. In essence, you've got to get your head straight before you can get your life straight.
Exactly.
And so you can be given all sorts of opportunities, but if you don't have your head straight, you're not going to go straight.
Ain't no question. Might go where the head lead you. If they would have given me something like, told me, hey, Mr. Joiner, okay, you're the first time offender. Remember they came out with the first time offending stuff. But they had a lot of different criteria with it, though, that make you wonder, okay, you say if I'm a first time offender, that should all matter. But no, that was criteria that would keep you from getting it. They had criteria around it that would keep you from getting it.
So you might want it, but you wouldn't be eligible.
Say you had, like for instance, I think with that 2-point gun enhancement. Say you had that. No, you wasn't getting it. Because now you a violent offender because you got a gun in case. Even though it didn't say that I had the gun, but I had the 2-point enhancement, so I couldn't get it.
So in other words, the people who get the best programs are the ones who are the least threat of danger to the community. And the more dangerous you are to the community, the less opportunities for a different way of life you get while you're in prison because you're not eligible for them.
Exactly.
I'm
Exactly.
not sure that makes a lot of sense.
Me neither, but that is what it is. There's a lot of things in there that throw you for a loop, like when the crack law changed. When the crack law changed, there was a certain amount if you had, you wasn't eligible.
Right.
But how does this make sense? I still don't understand it. You said if I had a crack case, I'm eligible for a reduction in my sentence. Now all of a sudden you come up and you put an amount in it. What difference it make you put an amount in it? If I got a crack case, I got a crack case, regardless of how much. I told them I wrote a letter to Senator Dick Durbin and told him that discrimination. You can have crack because I got more than you, I'm disqualified. It doesn't make sense. I still don't understand that to this day. It don't make sense.
Well, you, Mr. Dent, have talked about in the federal system there were some incentives, or there ought to be more incentives. And I think there ought to be in any criminal system. Because when you get right down to it, things are the way they are because that's how the incentives align.
Right.
And if you want to change outcomes, then change the incentives.
Exactly.
So I think that's part of what needs to be in the mix as we think and rethink our criminal justice system. What incentives do we have in place? And what supports do we have in place to help people have the incentive to get their life straight and the ability to get their life straight? Now, some people that may include drug treatment. Some people it's cognitive behavioral therapy, depending on where you are on the way. Some people it may be job skills and job opportunities and work habits, things of that sort. Everybody's different. So it's one system, you try to get justice by having everything consistent, like a mathematical system. And the other one, you have to look at each individual as an individual. And I can tell you it's not easy to figure out what sort of system we ought to have. I have my own opinions, but I learn from you. You guys are subject matter experts. You've been on the inside. You've experienced it.
Right.
And somebody like me and the people who are listening here, for the most part, are going to be people who haven't experienced that. So it's really valuable to get your thinking. Is there anything else either one of you wants to share before we close up?
Yeah, I can say this. During my experience in prison, from inmates and COs, they used to look at me and used to be always like, man, why are you in here? And, because I was always quiet and what I was actually do, as far as job-wise, whatever I did it. And I didn't give the COs no problems or nothing like that. When it was lockup time, whenever I locked up. And they used to be like, man, all of them like, why are you in here? And I tell them, and they be like, I don't see it. I don't see it. You're a good person. I don't see it. And I started laughing. Me like, yeah, I know, man. But unfortunately, hey, I got caught up, stuff like that. And
that's what the formula said, 20 years.
Yes. Even
I was there. I know. I was the prosecutor in the case.
Yes.
20 years was 20 years.
I was in Florence, Colorado. I had to go in and see a case manager. Oh yeah, Florence, Colorado. Yes, every bit of tough.
Yeah.
And yeah, man. I was there when, riots broke out, all kind of stuff. And
yes.
How they do the interviews when riot broke out. They call you off to see what happened. And
like Mr. Risley do.
Yeah, yes,
did back then.
Yes, and I had to. It was come time for, when they do your points and send you out to get you another joint, but somehow this one case manager told me my points never change, how I be there and everything. I was like, okay, I'm fine with it. But then when I go see this other caseworker, she was like going through all my papers, and she was like, what are they talking about? I don't see it. Violence, where is that? Huh? All the time you locked up, I said, no. Once she's like, well, I'm getting this. She got all that violent stuff that was on on my paperwork. She got it out of there. And she was like, well, I was in FCI.
The Federal Correctional Institute.
Yes, the medium. So now when she did all that, she like, all right, Mr. Dent, I got rid of that. Where do you want to go? I'm like, huh? She know, where do you want to go? I'm like, what you mean where I want to go? Well, you had before a low now. You have to go to a low facility. So where do you want to go? I said, man, I don't know. I mean, wherever, still prison, you know what I'm saying? So wherever. And that's how I ended up in Lexington, Kentucky. So she said, well, it's not close, but it's close. So how about Lexington, Kentucky? I was like, it's fine. She like, yeah, because all this they got in here. She's like, I don't see it, man. We finna get you out of here. And they got me away from Florence, Colorado. Like I said, they did a lot of rough stuff in there, like I said, but like I said, I just...
Depends on the person that you get as your caseworker or your...
Yes. I mean, they just, if they look through your paperwork right, or they got time and they want to make sure everything's right, they go through your paperwork right.
Well, there's a lot more options in the federal system, that's for sure, than there is in the state system.
Yes.
The state system, having worked in the governor's office and worked with the Department of Corrections, Illinois Department of Corrections, it's a different world. They face resource challenges. They don't have all these institutions all across the country that they can work with, where they send you to one institution where there's a cooking school where you can become a certified chef like Mr. Joiner did.
Yes.
They do have some, in the state system, some job programs, and some of them are really good, but it's hard to make those available. Well, they don't have the resources to make them available to everybody that wants to get into those programs.
Right. I took up cooking school too. I think I did about 5 years. It wasn't culinary art. It was just plain cooking school.
Yeah, they have a catering gourmet. You do about, I think you have to do like 60 months, which is 5 years of it.
5 years of school.
Yes. They want you to learn everything from
Baking,
cleaning, from all the way from the bottom to the top. Then it's like 2 thick books like this you got to go through, and a couple small books. Everything.
Good thing about it, free though.
Yes.
It's free,
Yeah.
And when you get out of prison, let me just point this out. When you get out of prison and you're applying for a job as a cook here in Springfield or anywhere else, how many people who are also applying for those jobs who did not go to prison have gone through 5 years of training to be a cook?
Not many.
Or probably none.
Right.
You're probably the most qualified applicant for the job. And yet, because you have a prior felony conviction, it may be more difficult for you to get or keep the job, as Mr. Joiner found out.
Yes.
But one of the things that I will say about the certification you gain while you're in prison, it doesn't have the prison on it at all. It's just like one you would get out here. My certification do not have prison on it nowhere.
Right.
Just like any other chef, mine the same way. Just as like you had one, mine looked just like yours.
Well, this has really been an interesting and instructive conversation, and it's one that we're going to, Mr. Joiner and I will keep this conversation going with other guests. We really appreciate you being here with us today.
Like I said, I'm excited. I was excited to be here.
Well, I can tell you that I was excited to make reacquaintance with you after you got out of prison, because of Mr. Joiner putting us together. I just really respect you for what you've done with your life.
Sure.
I'm very proud of you.
Thank you too. I'm
very proud of you.
Like I said, I probably ain't at where I want to be at, but I'm where I need to be at.
Exactly. That's good word and good.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Justice Voices. Next week, we go to Chicago for an interview with Marlon Chamberlain, another returned citizen who built a new life after serving a mandatory minimum 20-year sentence. Mr. Chamberlain now manages a program sponsored by the Heartland Alliance called Fully Free, a campaign to end what he calls permanent punishment due to the obstacles people face even after release from prison and completing their sentences. Like Mr. Dent's, Mr. Chamberlain's is a story that needs to be told, a voice that needs to be heard. Be sure to hit the subscribe button to this program so you don't miss that or any future episodes. This is Justice Voices, stories that need to be told, voices that need to be heard.